7:30. There we go. Shavua Tov. It is wonderful to see everybody, as always. Has everybody had a good Shabbat? Also,
Yes, nice and warm day.
yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah.
hot but beautiful.
Shabbat Shalom, Bob. Nice to see you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Good to see you.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Stan, I don't think we ever actually said Shabbat Shalom to you, and good to see you. I saw you this morning, but it's always good to see you, Stan. All right. So I thought that tonight, Andrew thought that tonight, we talked about it. Tonight we're going to start with a story, and then we'll do Havdalah afterwards, if that's okay with everybody who is here.
Absolutely.
Story first. And inspired by Study Minion, in fact, I wanted to tell a story about King Solomon and his wisdom. We started the book of Proverbs this morning in Study Minion, and so we've been talking about Solomon, and we've been talking about wisdom. And so I decided that the appropriate story to tell would be one about Solomon and his wisdom. So once upon a time, Solomon was king, and the Queen of Sheba arrived for a visit. And she arrived in all of her spectacular everything, with her jewels and her throngs of people who come with her, musicians and all of these amazing things. She made quite an entrance. And Solomon was, always happy to entertain a queen. And she came right in and she said, "King Solomon, I have heard about your wisdom. Will you answer some riddles for me?" And he said, "Well, of course, Your Highness, I would love to." So she had 3 riddles for him, which I'm going to read because I will never get them right otherwise, because I am not Solomon. So the first riddle was, "It grows in the field with its head hung down like reeds. It enhances the distinction of the rich, but it is the disgrace of the poor, an adornment for the dead, and a threat to the living. It brings delight to the birds, and is a cause of mourning for the fish." Well, not even a moment went by, and Solomon said, "Well, it's flax, obviously. Because after all, beautiful linen robes enhance the distinction of the rich, and linen rags are a shame of the poor. The dead are wrapped in a linen shroud, but the living live in fear of the flaxen noose. The birds delight in finding flax, but the fish hate it because it makes the nets that catch them." Well, she was impressed. It was so fast and so thorough of an answer that she said, okay, nicely done. Here's your next riddle. What water comes neither from heaven nor the flowing mountain streams? It can be sweet as honey or bitter as aloe, but it always flows from the same source. Again, not a moment went by when Solomon said, "Tears." So clearly, it is tears. A tear on the cheek doesn't come from heavens, from above, or from the streams that are below. And they can be joyful or they can be sad and bitter, but tears are all water. And she said, 2 for 2. Very nicely done, King Solomon. Now here is the third one. And she snapped her fingers, and her servants began to bring in flowers. There were like 100 of them, and each servant stood around the room with a vase of flowers. And she said, "Now, Solomon, in your great wisdom, of these 100 vases of flowers, one is real. The rest of them were made by my very impressive artisans. Can you please show me the real flower?" Well, Solomon looked first quickly at the flowers that were now circling his room. He started to get a little nervous because these were very well done flowers. On first glance, he could not figure out which one was the real living flower and which ones were the ones made by human hands. First, he thought he had the answer because he saw a tiny little dewdrop on one petal, and then he looked at the flower next to that one and saw an identical tiny dewdrop. And he realized these artisans were really talented and really good, and he wasn't sure he was going to be able to answer this riddle, and he was really nervous that she would think a lot less of him, because she would, if he couldn't answer the third riddle. So he walked around the room, trying to buy himself a little bit of time and figure out what to do. He even opened the windows for some fresh air. And as he opened the windows, a bee flew in. And one of his servants immediately got a little bit nervous and went over to the bee to try to shoo it back outside, and Solomon smiled and he said, "The bee is one of God's creatures. Let's let it be. Let it stay. It's fine." And he watched quietly as the bee was not fooled by the beautiful paint job and the beautiful craft work of the artisans. The bee went straight to the real flower. And Solomon smiled, followed the bee, picked up the flower, and presented it to the Queen of Sheba. And she smiled and she said, "You're absolutely right. And I know it is true wisdom, because you know when to answer yourself and when to listen even to the smallest of God's creatures." So that is this week's story. And now we're going to turn to Havdalah. So if you have a Havdalah set nearby, we're going to go ahead and get those ready. If it's not already, I'm moving my camera slightly so you will be able to see mine. There isn't no good way to do this. I will make sure that the candle doesn't fall down like that when it's lit. I promise. I have not yet found a good way to do this. All right, I'm going to turn off my light, and then we will begin as God began, creating light. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech v'samim. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei meorei ha'esh. Borei meorei ha'esh. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera ve'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Hamavzil ben kodesh lechol. Chatoteinu imcho. Zareinu v'chaspeinu. Yarbekachol. V'hakochavim. It's a big flame. Laila. I can't hold it out like Cantor can. But we can continue singing anyway. Shavuatov, 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 Shavuatov. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Shavuatov, 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 Shavuatov. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. a good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Shavua Tov. That was a good one. That was a long one. Apparently, I poured a little too much fruit of the vine on the tray.
Shavua Tov, everyone. Have a beautiful
Shavua
week.
Tov.
Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful week.
You too. Have a great week ahead, everybody.
Yes.